Welcome to Whisper Facts 101. Here is 101 fascinating facts about Butterfly TV show. Butterfly is a 2025 Amazon Prime Video spy thriller series that premiered on August 13, 2025, and is adapted from the Boom Studios graphic novel by Arash Amel and Marguerite Bennett, with art by Antonio Fuso and Stefano Simeoni. While the original story was set in Europe, the TV adaptation reimagines it as a Korean-American espionage drama. This change adds fresh cultural layers and a different visual style, making it stand out from other spy series while honoring its comic book roots. The series relocates much of its narrative to South Korea, a decision that reflects both the heritage and creative vision of Daniel Dae Kim, who stars as David Jung and serves as executive producer. This change allowed the show to weave authentic Korean culture, language, and settings into the plot. It also gave the series a unique edge in the crowded spy thriller market, combining international intrigue with deeply personal themes. One of the standout features of Butterfly is its use of both English and Korean dialogue, which enhances the authenticity of the story and the believability of its characters. Daniel Dae Kim has spoken about how his Korean language skills, originally refreshed for his role in Lost, were crucial during filming in Korea. Switching between languages on set also reflected the dual identity and divided loyalties central to the show's plot. Daniel Dae Kim's involvement in Butterfly went far beyond acting. As the lead actor and executive producer through his company 3AD, he played a central role in developing the series, influencing creative decisions from the script stage to the final edit. This allowed him to shape the show's tone, character depth, and pacing, ensuring it met his high standards for storytelling and cultural representation. The cast of Butterfly brings together a mix of established actors and fresh faces, including Raina Hardesty as Rebecca, Piper Perabo as Juno, and Louis Landau as Oliver. Each character brings a different dimension to the story, from Rebecca's conflicted loyalties to Juno's ruthless ambition. The ensemble also includes Korean actors Kim Tae-hee and Park Hae-soo, helping to ground the story in its South Korean setting. The series is structured into 6 episodes, all released at once on Prime Video. Except for the pilot and finale, each episode is named after the South Korean city where much of its action takes place, including Seoul, Busan, and Daegu. Filming on location in these cities gave the show a cinematic quality, with vibrant backdrops that amplify the tension and energy of the espionage storyline. At its heart, Butterfly is not just a spy story, but a deeply personal family drama. David Jung's sudden return after years of absence forces a painful and dangerous reunion with his daughter Rebecca, who has been raised to see him as a threat. The show weaves together themes of betrayal, redemption, and loyalty, all set against the high-stakes world of international espionage. Reviews of Butterfly have been largely positive, with critics praising its performances, pacing, and visual style. On Rotten Tomatoes, the series holds a 72% critic score and a 96% audience score. While not considered revolutionary for the spy genre, it has been widely regarded as a compelling, well-executed thriller that benefits from its cultural authenticity and the strong chemistry between its lead actors. While praised for its action and atmosphere, some critics have pointed out that certain character arcs, particularly Rebecca's emotional journey, feel underdeveloped. Others noted that parts of the plot rely on familiar spy genre tropes. Still, the combination of brisk pacing, well-choreographed action, and emotionally charged family dynamics kept most reviewers engaged and eager for a potential second season. The first season of Butterfly ends on a dramatic cliffhanger, with David's wife Yunja gravely injured and Rebecca missing. The unresolved storyline has fueled speculation about a second season, with Daniel Dae Kim hinting that there are many more layers to explore in both the characters' relationships and the overarching spy narrative. Fans are already campaigning online for its renewal. The inspiration for adapting Butterfly into a live-action series came from Daniel Dae Kim's long-standing interest in stories that blend high-stakes action with deeply personal stakes. When he first read the Boom Studios graphic novel, he was drawn to its potential for exploring identity, loyalty, and betrayal in ways that could resonate with both Western and Asian audiences. By reimagining the setting and characters to reflect Korean-American experiences, the series took on a fresh cultural depth that set it apart from typical espionage thrillers. One of the most talked about aspects of the show's production was its decision to film extensively on location in South Korea, rather than relying heavily on studio sets. The creative team believed that the bustling streets of Seoul, the historic charm of Busan, and the industrial landscapes of Daegu would give the series a level of authenticity and visual flair that green screen work could never match. This choice not only benefited the look of the show, but also helped the actors immerse themselves more fully into their roles. The relationship between David Jung and his daughter Rebecca forms the emotional core of Butterfly, and it is far from a simple father-daughter dynamic. Rebecca has grown up under the influence of Juno, David's former partner and now the leader of Caddis, an organization that views David as a traitor. This complex web of loyalties and resentments creates constant tension between the two, turning even brief moments of tenderness into scenes layered with mistrust and danger. Raina Hardisty's portrayal of Rebecca was widely praised for balancing vulnerability and ferocity. Her performance reflects the inner conflict of a young woman torn between her upbringing as an assassin and the possibility of reconnecting with a father she has been taught to fear. The physical demands of the role required Hardisty to undergo months of combat and weapons training, ensuring that the action sequences felt believable and grounded in her character's skills. Piper Perebo's role as Juno provided one of the show's most compelling antagonists. Juno is more than a simple villain. She is a cunning strategist with her own twisted sense of loyalty, shaped by her shared history with David. Her manipulative nature is matched by moments of calculated charm, making her one of the most unpredictable forces in the series. Perebo's layered performance added an unsettling humanity to Juno, preventing her from becoming a one-dimensional foe. One element that elevated Butterfly above many other spy dramas was its careful attention to multilingual realism. Dialogue shifts between English and Korean were not just for atmosphere, but were often tied to plot points, character relationships, or moments of cultural tension. This linguistic interplay made the show more immersive for bilingual viewers and served as a storytelling tool that revealed unspoken layers of emotion and subtext. The show's action choreography was handled by a team of stunt coordinators with experience in both Hollywood blockbusters and South Korean action cinema. This fusion of styles gave Butterfly a distinctive flavor, balancing the tightly controlled precision of Western stunt work with the dynamic, camera-conscious flair often seen in Korean thrillers. The result was fight sequences that felt cinematic without losing the raw intensity needed for a grounded spy narrative. Beyond its action, Butterfly also received attention for its cinematography, which leaned heavily into natural lighting and handheld camera work to create a sense of immediacy. Director of photography choices often reflected character perspective, with tighter, claustrophobic shots during tense interrogations and wide, sprawling frames during moments of isolation or escape. This visual storytelling deepened the audience's connection to the emotional beats of the series. The musical score, composed by a team blending Western orchestration with Korean instrumental textures, became another defining aspect of Butterfly. The soundtrack shifts fluidly between subtle atmospheric tones and pulse-pounding percussion during action scenes. By integrating traditional Korean instruments like the gaegeum into certain themes, the music reinforced the cultural duality present throughout the show. Fans have already called for a standalone soundtrack release. Marketing for Butterfly leaned heavily into its cultural crossover appeal, with promotional events in both Los Angeles and Seoul. Trailers highlighted not just the high-octane action, but also the emotional stakes, often focusing on the father-daughter relationship as much as the espionage plot. This approach successfully broadened the audience beyond typical spy genre fans, drawing in viewers interested in character-driven drama. During its development phase, Butterfly benefited from Daniel Day Kim's long-standing partnership with Amazon MGM Studios, which had been exploring projects with strong representation for Asian and Asian American characters. Kim's production company, 3AD, had already built a reputation for championing diverse storytelling, and Butterfly became a flagship example of that mission. The development process included multiple script revisions to ensure that the cultural elements weren't simply surface level, but deeply integrated into the plot and character motivations. Casting choices for Butterfly were made with a deliberate focus on authenticity and chemistry. The production sought actors who could convincingly handle bilingual dialogue and seamlessly switch between high-intensity action and emotionally complex drama. Auditions for Rebecca's role, for example, required not only combat scenes but also moments of vulnerability in both English and Korean, a challenge that Raina Hardesty met with skill and nuance. A unique element of the show's visual identity came from its costume design, which subtly reflected the characters' internal struggles and alliances. David Jung's wardrobe evolved throughout the series, from the restrained, nondescript attire of a man in hiding to more practical, tactical gear as he re-entered the world of espionage. In contrast, Juno's costumes projected both authority and intimidation, often incorporating sharp lines and bold colors that set her apart in every scene. The writers made a conscious decision to avoid relying solely on heavy exposition to convey backstory. Instead, much of the history between David, Rebecca, and Juno was revealed through visual storytelling, old photographs, coded messages, and subtle body language. This approach rewarded attentive viewers and added layers of mystery that kept audiences engaged across all 6 episodes. One of the more subtle but impactful creative choices was how Butterfly portrayed South Korean cities beyond the common tourist images. Busan's dockyards, Daegu's gritty backstreets, and lesser-known neighborhoods in Seoul became critical backdrops for espionage operations. These settings helped the show avoid a glossy, overly polished look, grounding the story in a believable world where danger could hide around any corner. Daniel Dae Kim has spoken about how challenging it was to balance his dual roles as actor and executive producer, especially when it came to physically demanding sequences. On days when he had both intense stunt work and major production meetings, his schedule could stretch from early morning until well past midnight. Despite the fatigue, Kim has credited the experience with deepening his connection to the project and making the final product more personal. The supporting cast members also contributed significantly to the show's authenticity. Korean actors like Kim Tae-hee and Park Hae-soo brought their own experience from domestic film and television, enriching the performances with cultural nuances that might have been missed by less familiar talent. Their interactions with the main cast helped anchor the show's South Korean setting in a realistic, lived-in environment. Critical discussion around Butterfly often focused on its ability to combine genre conventions with cross-cultural storytelling. While the spy thriller format, complete with secret organizations, double crosses, and elaborate chases, was familiar to audiences, the cultural backdrop gave those elements a fresh twist. This fusion made the show appealing both to fans of action dramas and to viewers seeking something more grounded in character relationships. The series was also notable for its commitment to practical effects where possible. Explosions, chase sequences, and fight scenes often relied on real stunt work rather than CGI, which lent the action a tactile, visceral quality. This practical approach did increase production costs and required careful coordination between departments, but the result was a more immersive viewing experience that critics and fans alike appreciated. Following its release, online fan communities quickly began dissecting Butterfly's many mysteries, from coded messages seen in background props to subtle shifts in Rebecca's demeanor during specific encounters. This level of engagement suggested that the show had struck the right balance between telling a self-contained story and leaving enough unanswered questions to fuel ongoing discussion, and possibly set the stage for future seasons. The success of Butterfly was partly fueled by its global release strategy, which allowed viewers worldwide to stream all 6 episodes simultaneously. This approach encouraged binge-watching and sparked immediate online conversations, helping the show trend in multiple countries within hours of its premiere. Social media platforms became a hub for fan theories, scene breakdowns, and cultural discussions, with viewers praising how the series balanced gripping spy action with deeply personal family drama. Behind the scenes, the directors made a conscious effort to keep the camera movement dynamic during action sequences, while slowing the pace during emotional moments to allow performances to breathe. Handheld shots were frequently used in chase scenes to create a sense of urgency, while locked, steady frames conveyed tension in interrogation or confrontation scenes. This blend of visual styles gave the series a distinct rhythm that matched its fluctuating intensity. One interesting production detail was how the weather played an unplanned role in shaping certain scenes. Several sequences were filmed during unexpected rainstorms in South Korea, and rather than delaying the shoot, the crew incorporated the rain into the scenes. This added atmosphere and a raw, unpredictable quality to the visuals, making those moments stand out in a way that no amount of planning could have replicated. The show's title, Butterfly, operates on multiple symbolic levels. On the surface, it references the codename of David Jung, the protagonist, within the Caddis organization. On a deeper level, it alludes to themes of transformation, fragility, and the ripple effects of past actions. Parallels that run through David's attempts to reconnect with his daughter while outrunning the consequences of his spy past. This metaphor became a subtle thread throughout the series. One of the boldest creative choices was the way the series handled its flashback sequences. Rather than presenting them as straightforward chronological storytelling, the flashbacks were woven into moments of high tension, often triggered by sensory cues like music, scents, or visual patterns. This technique blurred the line between memory and present reality, emphasizing how the past continually intrudes upon David's and Rebecca's current struggles. The chemistry between Daniel Day Kim and Raina Hardesty was the result of intensive preparation before filming began. The two actors spent weeks together in rehearsal, not only practicing fight choreography, but also building trust through improvisational exercises. This groundwork allowed them to portray the layered emotions of a father and daughter with a shared but fractured history, adding depth to their often wordless interactions on screen. Music supervisors for Butterfly carefully curated a soundtrack that blended original scoring with select licensed tracks from both Korean and Western artists. These musical choices often reinforced the dual cultural identity at the heart of the story. In one scene, a traditional Korean folk melody transitions seamlessly into a modern electronic beat, mirroring the collision of past and present in David and Rebecca's lives. The production team also made deliberate use of color grading to establish mood. Cooler tones dominated the espionage scenes, creating an atmosphere of detachment and danger, while warmer palettes were reserved for rare moments of intimacy and connection. This visual storytelling helped audiences intuitively feel the shift between emotional beats without overt dialogue, contributing to the show's overall cinematic quality. Cultural consultants were brought onto the project to ensure accuracy in depicting South Korean customs, idioms, and social nuances. These consultants reviewed scripts, advised on set design, and even corrected small gestures or mannerisms to keep the portrayal authentic. Their involvement not only avoided cultural missteps, but also earned the series respect among Korean viewers, who noticed the attention to detail in even the smallest interactions. Perhaps one of the most intriguing elements for viewers was the morally ambiguous nature of nearly every major character. No one in Butterfly is entirely good or entirely evil. David may be a loving father, but his past actions are far from blameless. Juno is ruthless, yet her motivations are rooted in betrayal and survival. This gray morality kept audiences invested as loyalties shifted and the line between hero and villain blurred throughout the season. The choice to keep Butterfly to just 6 tightly written episodes was intentional, as the creative team wanted to avoid filler storylines and maintain constant forward momentum. Each episode was designed to feel essential, advancing both the plot and the emotional arcs of the characters. This condensed format also meant the stakes remained high, with little room for subplots that might dilute the tension or pacing. Viewers appreciated this lean structure, which encouraged marathon viewing sessions. Daniel Day Kim has described Butterfly as one of the most personal projects of his career, not only because of its cultural representation, but also due to its themes of family, sacrifice, and the cost of one's choices. In interviews, he has compared David Jung's journey to his own experiences navigating identity and belonging in 2 different worlds. This personal connection infused his performance with authenticity and subtle emotional weight. The show's editing style played a major role in keeping audiences hooked. Quick cuts during combat sequences created adrenaline-fueled energy, while lingering shots during moments of doubt or suspicion allowed viewers to soak in the emotional complexity. Editors also used parallel action, showing 2 characters in separate but thematically linked situations, to heighten suspense and emphasize the dualities present in the story. A standout feature for many fans was the portrayal of Caddis, the shadowy organization at the center of the conflict. Rather than painting it as a faceless villain, the writers gave Caddis its own intricate hierarchy, rules, and history. Characters within the organization had distinct personalities, ambitions, and rivalries, making it feel like a living, breathing network rather than a generic plot device. Rayna Hardisty's fight scenes were often cited as some of the most intense moments of the series. Her ability to combine precision, speed, and emotional expression during combat impressed both critics and viewers. Many of these sequences were filmed in long takes to showcase her physical skill without relying too heavily on editing tricks. Hardisty credited her stunt trainers for pushing her to a level of performance she hadn't previously achieved. The character of Oliver, played by Louis Landau, served as a surprising wild card in the story. At first, he seemed to be little more than Juno's obedient son, but his actions in later episodes revealed unexpected depth and moral conflict. Oliver's shifting loyalties added complexity to the narrative and left viewers debating his true intentions well after the credits rolled. Sound design in Butterfly was another subtle but crucial element. The series frequently used environmental audio, distant traffic, dripping water, the hum of fluorescent lights, to create an immersive atmosphere. In moments of heightened danger, sounds would sometimes be muted or distorted, placing the audience directly in the disoriented perspective of the characters. This meticulous approach to audio helped reinforce the emotional beats of the story. The series also stood out for its nuanced portrayal of female characters in a traditionally male-dominated genre. Both Rebecca and Juno are formidable figures who are defined not solely by their relationship to male characters, but by their own ambitions, strengths, and flaws. This commitment to fully realized female roles resonated strongly with audiences and critics, earning praise for breaking away from predictable archetypes. One memorable aspect of the production was the way it incorporated small, seemingly insignificant props as meaningful symbols. Items like an old wristwatch, a worn photograph, or a child's drawing would later resurface as emotional triggers or plot devices. These visual callbacks created a sense of cohesion and rewarded attentive viewers who picked up on the details. In the weeks following its release, Butterfly gained a strong foothold on fan art and fan fiction platforms. Artists recreated key scenes with stylized interpretations, while writers expanded on the backstories of supporting characters or imagined alternate endings. This level of fan engagement not only extended the show's lifespan online, but also indicated that it had succeeded in creating a rich enough world to inspire ongoing creative exploration. The show's pacing balanced intense bursts of action with quieter, introspective moments, a rhythm that kept audiences engaged while allowing for emotional depth. By giving characters space to breathe between high-stakes sequences, the writers let viewers connect with their motivations and struggles. This ebb and flow in storytelling also heightened the impact of the more explosive scenes, making them feel earned rather than constant. One particularly striking element of Butterfly was its use of lighting to reinforce mood and theme. Cold, blue-toned lighting dominated the scenes involving espionage or isolation, while warmer hues appeared during moments of trust, family connection, or personal vulnerability. These visual cues subtly guided audience emotions without drawing overt attention to themselves, adding a subconscious layer to the storytelling. Critics noted that the show's world-building was unusually robust for a miniseries. Even though the plot focused on a handful of central characters, it hinted at a much larger geopolitical landscape with complex alliances, rival organizations, and shadow economies. This sense of a wider, unseen world gave the series an almost novelistic richness, leaving room for future expansion should the creators choose. The tension between David and Juno was a constant driving force, blending personal history with conflicting loyalties. Their encounters were charged not just with physical danger, but with a deep undercurrent of shared memories and betrayals. This dual layer of emotional and strategic conflict added a sophistication to their dynamic, ensuring that their clashes resonated beyond simple hero-villain confrontations. Many viewers were captivated by the series' subtle foreshadowing. Dialogue lines that initially seemed casual would later take on deeper meaning when tied to revelations about character histories or hidden motives. The careful seeding of clues throughout the episodes encouraged rewatching, as fans sought to catch the details they had missed the first time. The musical score, while understated, became a defining feature of Butterfly. Rather than relying on bombastic action themes, the composers often chose minimalist, atmospheric tracks that heightened tension without overpowering the visuals. In moments of silence, the absence of music was equally impactful, allowing natural sounds or character breaths to convey urgency. Another noteworthy choice was the show's refusal to tie up every plot thread neatly. While the main storyline reached a satisfying conclusion, several subplots were left ambiguous, sparking debates among fans about the fate of certain characters and the future of the world presented. This deliberate open-endedness made the show linger in viewers' minds long after the finale. The wardrobe design for Butterfly also played a key narrative role. Characters' clothing choices reflected their psychological states and social environments. David's minimalist, functional attire contrasted sharply with Juno's sharper, more imposing outfits, symbolizing their different approaches to control and survival. Even minor changes in accessories or color palette were used to signal shifts in allegiance or emotional turmoil. In a behind-the-scenes feature, the stunt coordination team revealed that many fight sequences were choreographed like dance routines, with careful attention to rhythm and flow. This ensured that the combat looked both realistic and visually compelling, while also helping actors avoid injury. The result was a level of fluidity that set Butterfly apart from other action dramas. The decision to adapt Butterfly from a comic book meant that the production could draw from a rich visual source, but the team was careful not to simply replicate panels on screen. Instead, they treated the comic as a tonal and thematic guide, expanding its characters and relationships while preserving its core sense of intrigue and danger. This approach pleased both longtime fans of the source material and newcomers alike. The child actress who played Jean was widely praised for her ability to convey complex emotions without excessive dialogue. Her performance struck a rare balance between vulnerability and resilience, making her a believable and sympathetic focal point. Many viewers remarked that some of the most powerful moments in Butterfly came from her silent expressions rather than spoken lines, proving the strength of visual storytelling. The show's visual motif of butterflies, both literal and symbolic, carried layered meaning throughout the series. Sometimes they appeared as fleeting background details, other times in artwork or conversation, serving as a metaphor for transformation, fragility, and fleeting freedom. This consistent yet subtle presence gave the show's title a deeper resonance and invited analytical discussions among attentive viewers. One of the production's most impressive feats was its seamless blending of practical effects with CGI. Explosions, car chases, and close combat stunts often relied on real-world setups, while digital effects were used to enhance scale or add impossible details. This hybrid approach helped the action sequences feel grounded without sacrificing cinematic spectacle. The showrunner revealed in interviews that Butterfly had undergone significant rewrites before filming began. Early drafts leaned more heavily into traditional spy thriller territory, but later revisions focused on emotional stakes and character-driven tension. This pivot made the series stand out in a crowded genre by prioritizing human connection over constant spectacle. International reception of Butterfly was notably strong, especially in non-English-speaking markets where audiences connected with its universal themes of loyalty, identity, and moral conflict. In some countries, the show even topped streaming charts for several consecutive weeks, outperforming much larger budget productions. This global reach helped cement its cult status. The editing style of Butterfly was intentionally varied to match narrative pacing. Fast cuts during action sequences built adrenaline, while long, lingering shots and tense conversations drew viewers into the characters' psychological states. This deliberate control over rhythm gave the show an immersive, almost cinematic quality that rewarded patient watching. In crafting the character of David, the writers wanted to avoid the trope of an invincible action hero. He is shown to make mistakes, suffer injuries, and struggle with moral compromises. These imperfections made him more relatable and allowed audiences to connect with him on a human level rather than seeing him as an untouchable figure. The decision to tell parts of the story through flashbacks proved crucial to deepening the narrative. Rather than dumping exposition, the series revealed key past events in short, emotionally charged sequences. This approach not only maintained suspense, but also reframed viewers' understanding of current events in the plot, making rewatching particularly rewarding. The filming locations were deliberately chosen to create a sense of geographical disorientation, reflecting the characters' emotional states. Urban alleyways, dimly lit train stations, and anonymous hotel rooms blurred together, underscoring the instability of the world the characters inhabited. These backdrops became characters in their own right, shaping the mood of each episode. The show's finale sparked heated discussion because of its morally ambiguous ending. Rather than delivering a clear victory for one side, it left open questions about the cost of survival, the compromises made, and whether redemption was truly possible. This refusal to give a neatly packaged conclusion aligned with the series' themes of uncertainty and transformation. A recurring strength of Butterfly was its ability to portray espionage without relying on constant high-tech gadgetry. Instead of leaning heavily on futuristic tools, the show focused on low-tech methods, human intuition, and improvisation in dangerous situations. This made the spy work feel more grounded and believable, appealing to viewers tired of over-the-top James Bond-style tech reliance. The soundtrack played a subtle but vital role in shaping the show's atmosphere. Soft piano motifs underscored intimate moments, while deep bass and tense strings heightened scenes of pursuit or confrontation. The composer reportedly studied character arcs closely before creating each piece, ensuring that music reflected emotional shifts rather than just serving as background filler. The production team paid close attention to wardrobe design, using clothing to reveal character development over time. Early in the series, Jin's attire is simple and functional, reflecting her guarded nature. As her confidence grows and her life becomes more complicated, her style evolves, incorporating bolder colors and layered textures that visually mirror her transformation. One of the show's most gripping narrative devices was its use of unreliable perspectives. At times, key events were shown from the point of view of characters with incomplete or distorted knowledge. This approach not only built suspense, but also forced audiences to question their own assumptions about the truth, creating a layered storytelling experience. The pacing of Butterfly defied typical television formulas by giving space for slower, introspective episodes in between high-intensity arcs. These quieter installments often explored character psychology, moral dilemmas, and backstory, deepening investment in the protagonists before thrusting them back into danger. Viewers who appreciated this rhythm compared it to the style of prestige dramas. The relationship between David and Jean was intentionally written to avoid romantic cliches. Instead, their bond was portrayed as a layered mix of mentorship, guardianship, and mutual dependency. This decision kept the narrative from falling into predictable territory and allowed their connection to be defined by trust and shared survival rather than romantic tension. Symbolism played a constant role, with certain recurring props holding layered meaning. For example, a small carved butterfly appeared multiple times across different locations and contexts, hinting at unseen connections between characters and events. Attentive viewers noticed these details and speculated about their deeper significance, fueling online discussion. The fight choreography in Butterfly emphasized realism over flashiness. Instead of overly polished martial arts sequences, the fights were quick, chaotic, and exhausting, with characters visibly struggling to overpower their opponents. This raw style not only added authenticity, but also kept the stakes high, as victory was never guaranteed. Behind the scenes, the actors reportedly underwent immersive training to prepare for their roles. This included survival exercises, basic combat drills, and even lock-picking practice to ensure their on-screen actions looked convincing. Several cast members noted that this training not only improved performance, but also helped them fully inhabit their characters' mindsets. The series avoided simple black-and-white morality, with even antagonists being given moments of humanity. Some villains had personal codes of honor, tragic backstories, or sympathetic motivations, making them more than one-dimensional obstacles. This moral complexity kept the audience engaged by blurring the lines between hero and enemy. Butterfly frequently explored the theme of identity, particularly how past experiences shape present choices. David's dual life as a spy and a father created internal conflict, forcing him to constantly balance survival with personal responsibility. Similarly, Rebecca and Juno grapple with loyalties and self-definition, illustrating that identity in this world is fluid and often dictated by circumstance rather than choice. The show's cinematography often framed characters in reflections or behind glass, visually reinforcing themes of observation, secrecy, and duality. Mirrors, windows, and water reflections were used strategically to suggest that what viewers see is only part of the truth. This visual motif supported the narrative's focus on perspective and hidden motives. One of the series' subtle achievements was its layered use of dialogue. Conversations were rarely straightforward. Small remarks often had multiple meanings depending on context or character knowledge. This required viewers to pay close attention, creating a sense of engagement and intellectual satisfaction as hidden meanings were slowly revealed throughout the episodes. Butterfly also stood out for how it portrayed emotional consequences of violence. Rather than glorifying combat, the show frequently highlighted its aftermath: physical injury, psychological trauma, and moral burden. Characters' reactions to these consequences added realism and weight, reminding audiences that each action carries a cost, and that survival does not equate to emotional immunity. The show incorporated traditional Korean cultural elements not only visually, but also narratively. Festivals, rituals, and familial customs were woven naturally into the story, giving audiences insight into cultural norms while enriching character motivations. These details helped build a world that felt authentic, relatable, and grounded in real human experiences. Costume and set design often worked in tandem to indicate shifting power dynamics. For instance, characters who assumed control in a scene were often placed in elevated positions with lighting emphasizing dominance, while their clothing subtly suggested confidence or authority. This visual language reinforced narrative developments without relying on explicit exposition. Butterfly also experimented with nonlinear storytelling. Scenes from the past and present were intercut in ways that highlighted emotional resonance rather than chronological order. This technique allowed the series to explore cause and effect in complex relationships, demonstrating how decisions reverberate across time and impact multiple characters simultaneously. The use of color was particularly symbolic. Red frequently appeared in moments of danger or moral tension, signaling alertness and intensity, while muted tones marked introspection, secrecy, or vulnerability. This deliberate palette gave viewers subconscious cues that heightened their engagement with the story. Fan communities quickly took note of the show's intricate plot structure, creating timelines and character maps to track events and relationships. Online forums dissected every twist, theorizing about hidden alliances and character backstories. This participatory culture extended the life of the series beyond its initial streaming window and fostered a dedicated international fan base. Finally, the show's production team emphasized authenticity in props and environments. Weapons, tech devices, and surveillance equipment were meticulously sourced or replicated to match realistic counterparts. Even everyday objects in homes or offices were chosen to reflect the character's personality and cultural background, creating a rich, immersive world that added depth and believability to the narrative. The series' narrative frequently emphasized the consequences of trust and betrayal. Characters constantly navigate shifting alliances, making decisions that impact both immediate survival and long-term relationships. This focus on loyalty as a double-edged sword added tension and complexity, ensuring that each choice carried emotional and narrative weight, rather than simply serving as a plot device. One innovative aspect of Butterfly was its portrayal of surveillance and espionage technology. Instead of overwhelming viewers with gadgetry, the series showed characters leveraging observation, deduction, and improvisation. Cameras, tracking devices, and encrypted communications were integrated into the story in ways that felt plausible and grounded, highlighting intelligence work as strategic and mentally demanding rather than flashy. The father-daughter relationship between David and Rebecca was central to the show's emotional resonance. Their interactions often oscillated between tenderness and tension, reflecting years of separation and opposing ideologies. Scenes showing subtle gestures, a glance, a hesitation, or a protective movement, conveyed as much narrative information as dialogue, making their connection feel real and layered. Cultural nuance was evident in how Butterfly handled respect, hierarchy, and interpersonal communication. Characters' speech patterns, gestures, and social interactions reflected Korean cultural norms, particularly in professional and familial settings. This attention to detail elevated the series above many spy dramas, offering viewers both entertainment and cultural insight without resorting to exposition. The show's pacing allowed for character introspection, often slowing down the narrative to explore moral dilemmas. These quieter sequences gave viewers insight into the psychological cost of espionage, highlighting the ethical compromises and emotional toll associated with living a life filled with deception, danger, and secrecy. Costume and set designers collaborated closely to reinforce narrative themes. For instance, characters in positions of authority or moral ambiguity often wore muted or sharp-edged clothing that mirrored their internal conflicts, while cluttered or minimalist environments reflected their mental states. This integration of visual storytelling contributed significantly to the show's overall tone. Butterfly also made creative use of sound design to heighten suspense. Ambient noises, footsteps, wind, machinery, were often amplified during tense sequences, creating a sense of immediacy and placing viewers in the character's perspective. Conversely, silence was deliberately used in critical emotional moments, amplifying tension and reflection. The writers carefully structured the series to reward attentive viewing. Early episodes included subtle visual or verbal clues that foreshadowed later developments, creating aha moments for viewers who noticed details. This approach encouraged discussion, rewatching, and engagement with online fan communities, enhancing the series' cultural impact. The moral ambiguity of Butterfly extends to its depiction of organizational loyalty. Caddis members are not simply villains but operate under complex codes and personal motivations. By presenting the organization as multifaceted rather than monolithic, the series adds depth and realism to its portrayal of espionage, making viewers constantly question who can be trusted. Finally, the series explores the theme of transformation through both character arcs and visual symbolism. Characters undergo significant internal changes, often mirrored by environmental cues such as changing cityscapes, weather, or symbolic props. These transformations reflect personal growth, moral compromise, or shifts in allegiance, reinforcing the show's central metaphor of the butterfly as a symbol of evolution and fragility. Butterfly distinguished itself by showing the emotional consequences of espionage on its characters' personal lives. Beyond physical danger, the series explored trust issues, guilt, and the psychological toll of deception. Characters often struggled with balancing professional obligations with familial bonds, highlighting the human cost of living in a world defined by secrecy and moral compromise. The series frequently used reflections, mirrors, and glass surfaces as visual metaphors. These motifs emphasize themes of duality, surveillance, and hidden truths, reinforcing the notion that characters and viewers rarely saw the full picture. Such symbolic imagery enriched the storytelling by layering visual meaning on top of dialogue and plot developments. One of the most compelling aspects of the show was its portrayal of female characters as fully realized, multidimensional figures. Rebecca and Juno were not simply foils for male protagonists, but drove the story through their own decisions, conflicts, and moral dilemmas. This approach challenged common spy thriller stereotypes and provided a more inclusive narrative landscape. The show's approach to tension often relied on anticipation rather than constant action. Extended periods of quiet, dialogue-heavy exchanges or subtle glances heightened suspense, creating psychological tension that made eventual action sequences feel more impactful. This careful pacing demonstrated that intensity could be achieved without non-stop physical conflict. Cultural authenticity was reinforced through language use. Characters switched fluidly between Korean and English depending on context, emphasizing identity, allegiance, and social hierarchy. These multilingual interactions added realism, and viewers familiar with both languages could catch nuanced meaning and subtext that deepened their understanding of the narrative. Props in Butterfly were often symbolic, serving as narrative anchors. Items like photographs, letters, or small personal belongings recurred throughout episodes, linking characters' pasts with their present actions. This careful attention to detail rewarded observant viewers and enriched the storytelling without relying solely on exposition. The music design played a significant role in shaping tone. A mix of minimalist instrumental themes and culturally inspired motifs underscored both emotional and suspenseful moments. Silence was also employed strategically, letting ambient sounds carry tension and immersing viewers more fully in the scene's psychological atmosphere. The series explored ethical dilemmas without easy resolutions. Characters frequently faced choices where no option was purely right or wrong, reinforcing the narrative's emphasis on moral ambiguity. These dilemmas encouraged viewers to reflect on the nature of loyalty, survival, and personal sacrifice, setting the series apart from conventional spy thrillers. Butterfly also excelled at world building. Beyond the immediate plot, the series hinted at broader organizational politics, international espionage networks, and hidden agendas. This attention to scale and depth created a believable ecosystem in which the story unfolded, enhancing viewer engagement and making the stakes feel more consequential. Finally, the series' visual storytelling reinforced its themes of transformation and fragility. From weather conditions and cityscapes to lighting and costume choices, every visual element reflected the characters' internal states and narrative arcs. These thoughtful design decisions helped unify the series' aesthetic while reinforcing its core motifs of change, consequence, and personal evolution. The dynamic between David and Juno often served as the emotional and narrative fulcrum of Butterfly. Their history of trust, betrayal, and shared experiences created tension that went beyond simple good versus evil storytelling. Each encounter between them was layered with personal stakes, unspoken resentment, and strategic calculation, making their confrontations both emotionally charged and suspenseful. Butterfly frequently highlighted the consequences of secrecy. Characters' decisions often backfired because of withheld information or misunderstandings, reinforcing the show's theme that even the smallest deception can ripple into life-altering consequences. This constant reminder of stakes made the narrative feel tense and unpredictable, keeping viewers engaged episode after episode. The series' cinematography made extensive use of environmental storytelling. Locations such as cluttered safe houses, industrial warehouses, and urban rooftops were more than just backdrops. They reflected the characters' psychological states, creating a visual language that complemented the dialogue and action. Viewers could glean emotional context simply by observing the setting. Fight sequences were choreographed to reflect the characters' personalities. David's style was precise and calculated, reflecting experience and restraint, while Rebecca's movements were faster, more instinctive, and adaptive. These differences in physical expression communicated character traits without needing dialogue, enriching the storytelling through action. The writers strategically used foreshadowing to reward attentive viewers. Early episodes included subtle visual cues, cryptic dialogue, and minor plot details that hinted at later revelations. Fans often revisited episodes to catch these nuances, demonstrating the depth of the series' planning and narrative complexity. One of the series' strengths was its exploration of family beyond blood ties. Characters formed bonds based on loyalty, mentorship, and shared experiences, emphasizing that familial connections can be both chosen and imposed. This theme added emotional weight to the story and underscored the complexity of relationships within a high-stakes espionage context. Sound design in Butterfly often emphasized realism. Footsteps, ambient city noise, and the subtle creaks of environments were amplified or muted depending on tension, placing viewers inside the characters' experiences. This careful use of audio created immersion and heightened suspense, reinforcing the stakes of each scene. The series frequently juxtaposed quiet, introspective moments with sudden bursts of action. This pacing allowed viewers to connect emotionally with characters while preparing them for the intensity of subsequent sequences. The contrast between calm and chaos enhanced both narrative tension and character development. The show's attention to linguistic detail added depth to character interactions. Code words, slang, and shifts between formal and informal speech reflected power dynamics, familiarity, and hidden agendas. These language choices were not only culturally authentic, but also narratively functional, allowing for subtle communication that carried plot significance. Finally, Butterfly used recurring visual motifs to reinforce its central themes. From butterflies appearing in subtle artwork to symbolic reflections in glass or water, these motifs emphasized transformation, vulnerability, and the impact of choices. Their consistent presence helped unify the series visually while reinforcing its narrative and emotional arcs. The show's portrayal of espionage emphasized strategy over brute force. Characters relied on observation, deduction, and timing rather than just weapons or gadgets. This grounded approach made the intelligence work feel authentic, highlighting mental acuity and foresight as much as physical skill. Viewers appreciated the realistic depiction of how high-stakes operations unfold. Butterfly also explored the psychological burden of leadership. Juno, as the head of Cadis, had to make morally complex decisions that affected multiple lives. Her calculated choices revealed both her tactical brilliance and the emotional toll of command, emphasizing that power comes with responsibility and ethical compromise. The series' flashbacks were carefully timed to reveal critical backstory at moments of maximum emotional impact. Instead of traditional chronological exposition, these scenes provided insight into characters' motivations and vulnerabilities, deepening audience empathy and making present-day decisions more resonant. Wardrobe choices reinforced character arcs. David's clothing shifted from subdued and practical to more tactical and layered as he re-engaged with espionage, while Rebecca's style evolved to show increasing independence and confidence. Subtle costume changes visually mirrored narrative and emotional developments. The show's cinematography frequently used shadows and framing to emphasize secrecy, tension, and hidden agendas. Characters were often partially obscured, or the camera lingered on objects that suggested threat or deception. This visual storytelling heightened suspense and reinforced the series' themes of trust and betrayal. Music and sound design worked hand in hand to create mood. Minimalist instrumentals, combined with environmental audio like city hums or distant sirens, enhanced tension without overwhelming scenes. Silence was also strategically used, allowing moments of emotional intensity to resonate fully. Cultural authenticity extended beyond dialogue to include rituals, social norms, and nonverbal communication. Subtle gestures, family interactions, and professional hierarchies reflected Korean cultural context, adding realism and depth while respecting the nuances of local customs. Butterfly emphasized the moral complexity of its characters. Even those labeled as antagonists displayed relatable motivations and ethical dilemmas. By refusing to present clear-cut heroes and villains, the series created a morally ambiguous world that encouraged viewers to consider the nuances of human behavior and decision-making. The series skillfully used props to reinforce plot and character relationships. Objects like photographs, letters, and small personal items recurred across episodes, linking past events with present decisions. These visual cues rewarded careful viewing and added richness to the storytelling. Finally, the show's pacing and structure balanced action with introspection. High-intensity sequences were interspersed with quieter, character-driven moments, allowing viewers to process emotional stakes and understand motivations. This rhythm enhanced engagement, ensuring that both plot and character development were compelling and tightly integrated. The series frequently explored the theme of consequence, showing how past actions ripple into present events. Characters often faced unexpected outcomes from decisions they believed were minor or inconsequential, emphasizing that every choice carries weight. This thematic focus reinforced the tension and moral complexity central to the story. Butterfly also highlighted the psychological impact of living a double life. David constantly navigated the roles of father, spy, and moral agent, while Rebecca and other characters struggled with divided loyalties. These layered identities created internal conflict and made each character's choices more compelling and unpredictable. The production team used lighting to enhance narrative tone. Cool, muted colors often marked espionage or danger, while warmer tones signified safety, trust, or emotional intimacy. These visual cues subtly guided audience perception and reinforced character states without explicit exposition. The show's fight choreography was meticulously designed to reflect character traits. David's movements were deliberate and precise, reflecting experience and calculated restraint, while Rebecca's actions were quicker, more reactive, and instinctive, showing her adaptability and youthful determination. This approach deepened storytelling through physical expression. Language was used strategically to convey power dynamics and relational nuances. Shifts between Korean and English, formal and informal speech, and coded dialogue highlighted allegiances, status, and trust. This multilingual approach added realism and complexity, rewarding attentive viewers with additional layers of meaning. The series employed recurring visual motifs to reinforce its central themes. Butterflies, reflections, and repeated symbols echoed the ideas of transformation, fragility, and hidden truths. These motifs created cohesion across episodes and subtly reminded viewers of the narrative's thematic threads. Sound design played a critical role in immersion. Ambient noises like city hums, footsteps, or environmental sounds heightened tension and conveyed perspective. Strategic silence emphasized emotional or suspenseful moments, making the audio a key narrative tool rather than background filler. Butterfly integrated cultural practices and social norms authentically. Family hierarchies, gestures of respect, and everyday routines reflected South Korean culture, grounding the story in a believable setting while providing international viewers with meaningful cultural context. The narrative structure used nonlinear storytelling to maintain suspense. Flashbacks revealed critical backstory and emotional context at precise moments, enhancing understanding of motivations and reframing present-day events. This layered chronology encouraged rewatching and discussion among fans. Finally, the series examined the consequences of trust and betrayal. Characters often had to navigate shifting alliances, and deception frequently led to unanticipated repercussions. This ongoing tension reinforced moral ambiguity and heightened dramatic stakes, keeping audiences consistently engaged.